You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 193. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where we talk about what really happens when you take a break from drinking. And it turns out to be the best thing you've ever done. I'm Anna, coach to high achievers who are done waking up with regret and ready to feel in control around alcohol. If you've ever wondered what your life could look like with less wine and more you, you're in the right place. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Or maybe this is your first time listening, in which case, welcome. You get a hearty welcome from me, and welcome to my little corner of the internet, where you will get judgment-free, shame-free advice, support, coaching on changing your relationship with alcohol. And this is particularly for you if you do not resonate with, the AA messaging or needing to go sober and all that jazz, and you just want to become a take it or leave it drinker. That is possible for so many people. You are in the right place. And today's episode is a pretty special one, actually, because it came in, I created it as a result of a request. Yes, I get listeners' requests. If you want me to cover a topic, write into me, anna@90dayslater.co. So a listener wrote in and she asked me to talk about regret. And the way she spoke about it was regret for not starting this sooner. And when she said regret not starting, what she meant was finally doing something, right? Deciding she was really going to finally do something about her drinking. And maybe for you that shows up as finally going to do something about not being a daily drinker, or drinking to relax, or drinking to keep the party going, or whatever it is, right? And we're talking about that moment when you decide I'm done living like this. And then almost immediately, you may be hit with the thought, why didn't I do this ages ago? Right? Now, maybe if you've ever thought, I wish I just started listening to Anna's podcast months ago. Maybe even there's another layer of regret. Maybe you found me a few months ago and you've just kind of been putting it off. And maybe you've been putting it off because while you like the idea of drinking less, maybe the idea of drinking less scares you, which is very common, very normal, by the way. I just started coaching with a new client, and that was one of his predominant thoughts, fear that he'd be successful. And I'm not laughing there. I'm just saying it's funny how we kind of catch ourselves out, right? That we want this thing and yet we're scared of this thing. So anyhow, if you've ever experienced regret because you've thought something like, I should have sorted my drinking out years ago, or if I'd cut back earlier, I wouldn't have wasted so much time, so much energy, maybe so much money, right? And if you think these things, you are not alone. Now, here is my take on this whole topic of regret. Regret is one of the most pointless emotions out there. Not because you're wrong to feel it, but because it doesn't get you anywhere. I mean, it really doesn't move you forward. When I work with people, I'm all about creating results into the future that we want. I'm all about possibility and change. And regret is just like a drag on that, right? So today, I want to show you how to drop regret. Yeah, you can drop it. And you can replace it with something that actually fuels change. I talk about often these negative emotions with my famous driving stories. If you're sitting there feeling with regret, but you're still trying to encourage yourself to move forward and do different things and take action. What I say on the podcast, if you're sitting there thinking, I just wish I had started this sooner. I feel so much regret about, my past mistakes. It really is like driving with your foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. You are slowing yourself down. So I have a 3-step process that you can apply right now, no matter how long you've been carrying around that I should have done this sooner message or story. Oh, and top tip as well. This 3-step process works for regret in any area of your life, not just drinking. This is one of the most marvelous things about coaching. While I use it with my clients to tackle, obviously, everything around alcohol. So much of this is a meta skill in that you can apply it to other areas of your life. All right, so the first way to get out of regret is I want you to recognize it. And I want you to decide you're going to stop getting yourself into this, right? You're going to recognize it and stop. And then that might sound, whoa, that sounds really easy, Anna. How does that? I haven't managed to do that over the time. So I'm going to tell you how to do that. Firstly, let's position regret for what it is. It is really just arguing with reality, right? It's saying this shouldn't have happened, or this shouldn't have taken this long, or I should have made a different choice. I mean, there's many different flavors of it. There's usually a should in there. You're usually shoulding yourself, right? So that's how it normally shows up. But here is the thing. That thing, whatever it is you're saying shouldn't have happened, it did happen. If you're saying it shouldn't have taken so long, it did take that long. And that choice you made that you shouldn't have made, it actually was the choice you made, right? So the more you argue with the past, the more stuck you are going to stay into it because you're arguing with things that actually happened. Now, what is even sneakier? And when I first realized this, was taught this, I kind of had one of those, shiver down the spine moments. I felt called out because this is what I would do the whole time. I used to do. I still sometimes catch myself doing it. But again, the point here is I can recognize it and I can stop, right? Here's an even sneakier thing that we do. We weaponize the past against ourselves. We tell ourselves that if we had done something differently, started earlier, made a different choice, our life right now would automatically be better. But the problem is you do not know that. You cannot A/B test your life, right? So I'm going to run this version of my life and I'm going to run this version of my life and I'm just going to pick the version that I like better. This is a total sliding doors situation, right? If you've ever seen that film, I think it stars Gwyneth Paltrow, where through one door she could have had a different life based on a different decision. Listen, you do not know what would have happened if you'd started listening to the podcast from day one. You can guess you'd be in a lot stronger position, but you don't know that. Maybe all you'd have done is you'd have just been listening to the podcast. You wouldn't have taken any action, right? You don't know what would have happened if you'd never started drinking as a teenager. You don't know what would have happened if you'd stopped drinking the first time you thought this isn't working for me. And here's something to consider. Yes, maybe it would have been better, right? Maybe it would have been better. Or maybe it would have been the same, or maybe it would have been worse. Things would be worse now. You simply don't know. And the point is, instead of deciding it must have been better, so you took the wrong decision, so you got yourself in this mess, and then you'll feel full of regret, try this thought on instead. It had to happen the way it did, because it did, and that's okay. This one reframe can take all the charge and emotion out of regret because you stop trying to rewrite history and you put your focus back on what you can control, which is right now. So let's look at a scenario example. Maybe you've just come back from holiday. I hear this a lot at this time of year when people decide, okay, this is it. Enough is enough. I want to work with Anna now. Maybe you've just come back from holiday where you tried to make it more alcohol free. But maybe you found that you were so in the habit that you weren't even seeing the drinks before you were drinking them. And then you're frustrated thinking if I'd started this work earlier, maybe this wouldn't feel so automatic. Now that thought can spiral into regret, right? Should have started this earlier, Or you can recognize it for what it is. It's just a story about your past that you don't have to keep telling. You can now choose to tell yourself a different story, and I recommend one that motivates you to start taking action now. Maybe I didn't start then, but I can start now. That is the next best time to start seriously working on this is now, because this is the moment I have right now, right? It's better than the future. It's That's just going to be today. So that's the first thing. I want you to recognize when you're sitting in regret. And you can just decide to call yourself out in the stories, and we can decide to stop telling ourselves those stories. Now, the second step, I want you to really understand your why for what you have done, right? We've spoken that the past is the past. You did what you did. You took those decisions. If you understand why you acted as you did, this can be a game changer, right? So why did you wait until now to seriously address your drinking? Answer the question, right? You might not love the decision in hindsight, but if you ask yourself why, you can understand it, and this stops the mental beating up, right? Maybe it was the best you could do with the information you had at the time, right? Maybe you didn't have a model for changing what you were drinking without quitting completely. Maybe you didn't know what that looked like. Listen, I still have people. I spoke to somebody just last week on a discovery call, and they tell me they almost didn't reach out to me because they were convinced I'd say, look, you got to quit forever. That's just the only way to do this. And if that is your story that you've been told by friends, by the press, by who knows, by all the advertising, right, by the culture around you, that there's only one way forward, and that is basically, if you have any kind of problem, is to go to AA and quit drinking immediately, then of course you're going to hesitate, right? But here is the thing. When you understand your why, when you understand why you've done what you've done, you take away that sting from regret. You can look at your past self and think, well, that's why I did what I did. I didn't reach out sooner because I really didn't think that was a way that I would be able to just moderate my consumption, which is what I deep down really want, right? You can look at that and see that was the best I could do with the information I had. This is not about excusing behavior, because we're not really into judging. This is about understanding it. So again, let's say as a scenario example, and these are all these scenario examples are the things I hear people tell me all the time. Let's say you've been listening to this podcast for 6 months. Maybe you've been dipping in and out. You like my message. You tried to do some of the things. Maybe you've had even a little success with some of the things I talk about. But you haven't booked a call to speak with me because you told yourself, I should be able to do this on my own, or at least I should be able to do this on my own with Anna's podcast. But you see where you are now. You're not where you want to be. And now you wish you could have that time again. Now you wish you could have reached out sooner. Now, when you stop and think about it, let's just try and understand the why, right? Let's just go and ask why. Maybe you were trying to prove something to yourself, right? Or maybe you thought asking for help meant failure. Maybe that was your rationale. And knowing your why, therefore, you see it wasn't laziness or lack of willpower or just because you couldn't be bothered. It was the belief system you were operating in at that time. And now you have a different one. And now you know you can change how you think about these things, right? Now we know that asking for help, we can decide that is not failure. In fact, reaching out for help, working through what is often for people when they first speak with me, maybe they feel embarrassed or threatened or scared or frightened or pathetic. I mean, I hear all the emotions, right? Or maybe they feel empowered. But if you're kind of on the negative side of the feeling because you think you should know how to do this by now, if you were operating under that model, then your decisions made sense. But now you know there's another way. Now you know you don't have to wait. Now you know that if you make the decision now, in 6 months' time, you won't be regretting what you didn't do, because you'll be on the other side of your transformation and freedom around alcohol. Take it or leave it freedom, which is so, so magnificent. There are not words to describe how magnificent it feels to just, figure this out for yourself and know that you can trust yourself. So that's the second part, was to understand your why. And then the third step is I want you to, again, from your looking at your past regret, I want you to learn from it and use the lesson. Whatever lesson that you spot there is always a lesson. Now, the first thing is you need to be willing to go back and look for the lesson. Maybe that's like sub step 1 in step 3. In order to learn from it, you need to be willing to go back in and look at it. And so here's the question I have you ask yourself when you to learn back and use the lesson. If I didn't like where that choice led me, what would I do differently now? This is where regret turns into something useful. This is when you see it as information instead of self-punishment. You can make changes and actually stick. You know that whatever approach you took before, even if you understand now your reasons why, we don't need to beat yourself up, because all we know is we know why it worked, why you thought it would work, and we also have the information that it did not work, right? This is like if you're driving around a town. Yes, I know the driving story is that too in the same episode, and you're trying to find this particular place, and you drive up this one-way street and it's a dead end, right? There's nowhere to turn the car around. You now got to do that painful thing, which is reversing in a straight line, and reversing out of the street, and then you got to double check your map and you got to find another way. What would you not do? You would not just then get to the end of the street and then drive back up that dead end street. So, oh, yeah, this is a dead end street, and then reverse. You wouldn't drive around the block and then drive back up that dead end street, because you know that that street doesn't take you to your destination, right? So that's what we can do. This is where mistakes and things that don't work are useful, because it really is information we can use for a lesson. So again, maybe as a scenario, another common scenario I see, a sort of profile of drinkers. Maybe you've been a bit of a stop-start drinker for years. You've gone alcohol-free for a month. You didn't maybe particularly enjoy it, which is what normally happens, because then you fall back into old habits. And it wasn't, absolutely what you wanted to do. It was just a drink here, a sip there, and then it was a bad day, and then you're back on it, right? People tell me I'm back on the wagon. Side note, there is no such thing as a wagon. Anyhow, maybe you're a stop-start drinker. And then each time when you fall back into habits, you look back, you say, oh, I wasted so much time. Why couldn't I just kept going? But if you really look, let's look at the lesson. You have learned something each time. Right, you've learned what trips you up. Yes, you have. Even if you can't write it out and tell me right this second, if you just sit quietly and think about these times, you will find something. You've learned where maybe support needs to be stronger. A lot of people tell me they really have a need for accountability. Now, I teach my clients how to be accountable to themselves, but especially in the early days, I understand the power of working with a coach for accountability. So even whatever you have learned, that is not wasted time. It is training. I want you to think of it in those terms. It is training. You've been training yourself. And listen, we are constantly being educated by life every single day. Right? I often say, oh, that's my new thing for the day. And I've learned I like to do a quiz of the day. Oh my goodness. That really shows up for me, all the things that I don't know. I could have full-blown regret. Oh, I wish I'd paid more attention when we were doing flags of the world in geography, right? I can either decide to beat myself up on that, as I can't answer these questions when they come up, or I can say I'm just going to learn them, which is, by the way, is what I'm doing. Yes, side note, I am learning the flag. I'm learning the flags so that I can be the flag expert on the quiz of the day, and on there's a pub quiz that we go to in the winter months. Anyway, that's I'm sort of really riffing off theme there. But really, we are always constantly being educated by life, right? And some of the most powerful changes come from the moments we wish we had done things differently, and know that actually in those moments we can, right? That's where we have the power. Now, with all that being said, I want to say this really clearly. If you have been listening to this podcast for months, and even, by the way, if you've just been listening today and you think, oh my gosh, I feel called out, Anna, that was me. If you've been thinking about changing your drinking, but you've been waiting for the quote unquote right time, I'm just going to help you decide, this is it. This is the best right time. I want you to book your free call with me today. Go to 90dayslater.co. There's a little box at the top. Book a free call. Or there's a link in the show notes. Just do it, and we will talk about how to create the transformation that you know you so deeply desire. And I want you to think, when you do that, and then we move ahead and we work together, in 6 months, not only will you have your desired result, but you will no longer be sitting there feeling weighed down from regret. I didn't start this sooner, because actually that is not true, because you did. You took the decision and you took the action. And I am going to sweeten this for you, because I'm a summer baby. I love the summer. I was born in the height of summer. So if you book your free discovery call with me in the month of August, and you decide to go ahead and work with me and coach with me, I am going to give you a copy of my book, The Off Switch, for free. I'll just give it to you. And it contains the exact process we're going to work through together, so you have it in your hands and start making changes and get accustomed to this even before our first session, right? And this is then your time. I want you to see that. If we want to regret-proof our life, this is how you can do it, by taking action today. Let us make August 2025, the month you stop looking back in regret, and the month when you start moving forward. And if you're listening to this on the replay, and it is goodness knows when, 2027, you're listening to this, you can still decide the podcast that I listened to today in 2027, even though it was recorded in August 2025, was the moment I decided to stop looking back in regret and to start moving forward. Okay, that's it for this week. I will see you next time. I'm your girl. I can help you with this. I want you to book a free discovery call with me. Like I say, this is free. We will chat about where you are. I will listen to what you want, and I will create a prescription for you. I'll say, this is the process. This is what we would need to do for you to reach your result. Right? I am experienced at this. This is my speciality. I love doing this. And you will then leave that call knowing so much more, and you will leave that call knowing what you would need to do to create the result you want. And if you're listening to this podcast, I know you want that result. So you have a choice. You can carry on sitting, trying to do it yourself, trying to figure it out, not understanding why it's not working, and just really feeling alone. Or you can do this alongside me, where I will map for you the exact path to get you to where you want to be. I know the shortcut route that will really create the new habits that you want, that will create the new life that you deserve. You do not deserve the wine. You deserve the best life you could possibly have. To get time with me, go to 90dayslater.co and click on book a call, or you can click on the link in the show notes for this podcast. This has been such a delight to share this episode with me. So do me a favor, share it with somebody you love. Share it with somebody who you think needs to hear these words today. And don't forget to book your discovery call with me. It will change your life. All right, I'll see you next week. If this episode hit home and you're ready to explore what life could look like with alcohol in the back seat, let's talk. I work with people one-on-one who are ready to create the relationship with alcohol that works for them, so they feel powerful in their choices and at peace with their habits. Go to 90dayslater.co and click on book a call, or grab one of the free guides in the show notes to this episode. And if this podcast is helping you, a rating or review goes a long way to help others find this work too.